What is up, everyone? Tonight we're going to talk about the Great Pepper Experiment of 2025. For those of you that don't know, I grew hundreds of varieties of fruits, vegetables, herbs, and flowers in my garden this year in San Clemente, California, Zone 10A. And I grew 16 different varieties of chili peppers, sweet ones, hot ones, extremely hot ones. And I want to talk about my results from my experiment. The goal from this year was to figure out varieties that grew best in my zone, in my environment, that had the right flavor profiles, that were really enjoyable and also yielded, and were resistant to diseases and any kind of problems. So I'm going to break it down pepper by pepper, starting from the not spicy ones and going into the insanely hot ones. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons that I experienced growing them here. And then I also am going to interweave a little bit of video footage throughout the season that I took out in the garden so that you guys can see the pepper plants actually growing. A whole lot of research and a whole lot of work went into this project. So I would really appreciate it if you guys could like the video, comment on the video, tell me what you thought about it, and let's get into it. Wasting no more time. Okay, so I'm Italian. One of my favorite peppers this year was the giant Marconi. This is an Italian heirloom pepper. This isn't even a giant one. I had even longer ones. I'll probably show a picture of that. These things got huge. They're like bell peppers, but they grew a lot better, and I think they even have a little bit better flavor. They're really good for raw, roasting, or stuffing. Look at that. These things are gorgeous. So highly recommend giant Marconi peppers. Those grew really well here.
The stocky red roaster was honestly my pepper of the year for sweet peppers. These plants were absolutely loaded up, cue the videos, and honestly, the only thing I didn't like was how they put all their fruits out at once and then they didn't seem to follow up with a whole bunch after that. But if I would have spaced them out a little bit more in the plantings, I probably could have had a whole lot of peppers and not an overwhelming amount all at once. But these things were like the Marconis, but a little bit smaller. I believe the genetics come from Italian peppers, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Marconi genetics are in the stocky red roaster. But these things were epic. They didn't require much staking because the peppers weren't quite as large, and they were absolutely loaded up with sweet, crunchy, thick walled peppers. So I couldn't recommend more highly trying out the stocky red roaster peppers if you like sweet peppers. And there's a reason why I'm not growing a lot of bell peppers. Bell peppers just tend to not really do that well in my experience. And a lot of the varieties are not heirloom, and they just seem to, like, you get this nice big bell pepper, but then there's like a bug inside of it and it's ruined. So some of these other peppers, I don't know if it was the skin that they had, I don't know if it's the tiny little bit of heat or what it was, but they were just a lot more resilient to things burrowing inside of them. So that's really couldn't highly recommend the stocky red roaster pepper more.
Now I missed out on 3 of the sweet peppers that I grew this year on my initial video. This is the mini yellow bell pepper. These are crunchy, sweet, and really flavorful. They were fun to grow and a great snacking pepper if you like to eat peppers raw. They produced early in the season, but they didn't continue to provide throughout the season like some of the other peppers did and didn't yield as much overall. Also, they're not yellow, they're orange. Now moving on to the mini red bell pepper. I planted this very late in the season, so these ones haven't ripened yet. You can see they're actually a little bit juicier and bigger than the mini yellows, so we'll see how that goes. And this is the Budapest Market chili. I got a plant of this from my landlord last year, and I saved the seeds. I'm growing it again this year. It's a lot like a Marconi, but it's just from a different region. So these are pretty fun, like a Hungarian chili. And I don't know, I like having weird stuff, so I might grow it again next year. Scoville heat unit is the measurement by which they determine how hot a pepper is. So on 0, you're going to get no heat, and some of the hottest peppers can be as much as 2 million Scoville heat units or higher. I believe pepper spray is at 1.7 million Scoville heat units. So there are some peppers that are hotter than pepper spray. So yes, and I grew some of them this year. So we'll get to that. Now, I'm not sure what happened here, but my audio seemed to just cut out while I was talking about the pimento. The pimento comes in at around 0 to 500 Scoville heat units, and these peppers were very vigorous in the garden. The only thing I didn't like, however, was that they were kind of squishy or chewy. They didn't have that crunch that I really like from peppers. So if you were going to stuff these or pickle them, or like what I did, I smoked them and then ground them up to make smoked paprika. Really delicious for that. But not my favorite pepper to just eat raw. I hope you enjoyed my little overdub that didn't match my mouth, not even one little bit. But the pimentos probably won't grow again, but they were fun and easy to grow. Pequeño Piquillo. Now these were the smallest and one of the funnest peppers in the garden. Look at these cute little guys, like little beaks. I think that's what Piquillo means. Uh, These came in at 0 to 500 Scoville heat units, and my audio is about to come back, so I'll let me from the past take this
Are
over.
little guys, so you're not going to get like all that much food. And I do have plans to pickle some of these because I think they're going to be really delicious. But they have a smoky, sweet, tropical, fruity flavor that just comes in with a tiny little kiss of heat. And I believe that is what piquino means, is little kiss. So try out piquillo peppers, really awesome in your garden. All right, let's crank up the heat. These Italian Rayano peppers were so delicious. Like, if you like a little spicy pepper in your eggs in the morning, or if you like to season up your Mexican food, or just doing like a chili Rayano, these ones are a little smaller because it's the end of the season, but these are super delicious peppers. They say that they're only like 500 Scoville heat unit, but I think they were a little bit more than that. I want to put them at 100 to 1000 Scoville heat units. These things were delicious, very productive. The plants were really loppy though, so they needed to be staked up. But if you like a little bit of heat, definitely recommend trying these out. Thin skins, but they didn't have a lot of pest issues either. So another great pepper for your garden that was highly productive. This was an interesting one, the red hot cherry pepper. These things were like on the plant all upside down. I'll show some videos of that. This is one of the thickest wall peppers, and you can leave it on the plant for a really extended period of time before it starts to shrivel and wrinkle. So if you're wanting a plant that you could just pick at throughout the season and you can leave them on there, the red hot cherry pepper is pretty good. It says online that the Scoville heat unit for these is on the lower end, like more closer to a jalapeno, but honestly I felt like these were hotter. Maybe it's just because they're more full of that white pepper flesh on the inside, because it's just like this is all full of seeds and that white flesh, which is where a lot of the capsaicin is for peppers, which is the spicy part. So these were fun to grow. I know there's different varieties. I want to try to grow a sweet variety of this because there are sweet apple peppers and other things like that that look a lot like this, and this is really well out here, but I didn't need another pepper in this heat range, honestly. So I'd rather have like a jalapeno for the flavor, but these were pretty cool and really easy to grow and disease resistant. So again, if jalapenos aren't working out for you, try one of these red hot cherry peppers. All right, now we're gonna get a little bit more spicy with it. Here is the early jalapeno. You can see nice crackling on that beautiful little pepper. These things were quite small though. I wasn't really impressed with the size overall, but they did have a good spice and they were highly productive, and they started early in the season and then they kept producing more late into the season as well. So this is a pretty easy jalapeno to grow. If you've been struggling to grow jalapenos, maybe give this one a shot. I'm going to be trying a few different jalapenos next season, not doing this one again, but it was a great plant and it was pretty productive, and the peppers are pretty hot. Moving on up, we've got Hungarian yellow wax. Now, these actually do ripen to like a lipstick red, but they're very yellow before they get to that stage. I like to let them get red because they're a little bit sweeter. And these things are very similar to the jalapenos, but I feel like the heat is less consistent. Like you'll have one that's not very spicy, then you'll have another one that's like pretty ripping hot. So they say they're at like the 2,500 to 8,000 Scoville heat units, which is actually similar to the early jalapeno that comes in at 2,000 to 8,000. Although I felt like they were more on the high end of that scale. The jalapenos and the Hungarian yellow waxes had a more variable heat. This pepper is a lot like a banana chili, and banana chilies also grow really well out here. So this was one of the most vigorous peppers in the nursery, and it also just was extremely productive. I felt like if I'd given them some more TLC, and the peppers ripened on the plants very slowly, so you have a lot of time to harvest these. So this was a pretty fun one to grow, but I don't know if it matches a lot of the cooking that I do all that much. So I don't know if I'm going to be growing these again in my garden, the Hungarian yellow wax, but it was a fun and productive and very easy to grow pepper. Now, I was really stoked to have serrano peppers this year because I didn't plant any, but I did fish out some nice looking pepper plants out of my compost, and 3 of them turned out to be serranos. So actually 4 of them, now come to think of it, there's one at the other garden as well. So I'm getting a lot of these beautiful serranos, and some of them are massive, like some of the biggest serrano peppers I've ever seen, and that's right out of my compost, and those plants were free 99, so I'm pretty stoked about that. The serrano comes in at 10,000 to 25,000 Scoville heat units with a really consistent medium heat level, so that you can make all sorts of chilies and sauces and things, and know that just a couple of these peppers are going to go a long way and provide you with a consistent heat for your dish. Whereas jalapenos, you don't know if it's going to come through with that punch sometimes, you know? So really good for making hot sauces and salsas and other stuff like that as well. I don't have one of these yet because it's the slowest ripening pepper, the Ahi Gold. And these, I don't know if I'm gonna grow them again next year, but if you want something freakish to kind of grow, just like that Pequeño Piquillo is like a small, squat little tree, the Ahi Gold is like this stretched out, massive, dinosaur looking pepper plant, and it's got thick stems on it. I'll try to see if I got some videos of that. And pretty wild looking pepper, big fruits on it, and they're gonna turn yellow or like orangey gold when it's time to harvest them, but they're not quite there yet, so they're still on the plant. But I got that from my friend last year who makes hot sauces. He actually makes chone hot sauces. I've learned a lot about peppers from Paul, my buddy in Laguna, and he grows a lot of different chili peppers from seed every year and makes hot sauces, sells them at the local markets. And so he was the one that actually told me to grow my peppers in pots this year, and they did so much better in pots than they did in my raised beds, which is ironic because usually it's the other way around. So couldn't recommend more growing your peppers in pots. 10 gallons is a great size. 7 gallons is going to be okay if you keep your plant a little bit smaller, or you're not growing too greedy of a variety like that Pequeño Piquillo is perfect. A smaller pepper like that, or if you've got like Thai chilies, those are going to be really easy to grow in a smaller pot. But if you want your plant to get massive, require less watering, and ultimately give you a little bit more fruits, go 10 or even bigger, and you're going to have some awesome pepper plants. All right, so the Ahi Gold is similar to the Serrano at around 10 to 25,000 Scoville heat units. So those are pretty fun. A little bit of sweetness on there, a little bit of cool flavor. But yeah, I don't know if the novelty of how crazy the plant looks is enough of a reason for me to have it around my garden again next year. All right, Sugar Rush Peach. I'll show you. I definitely have some videos and pictures of this plant. So roll those now. Did you do it? Did you do it? Now. So the Sugar Rush Peach comes in at 50 to 150,000 Scoville heat units. So these are kicking up into the pretty hot territory. And the Sugar Rush Peach, I actually have a plant that's been growing in my garden for 3 years now. And every year it puts out tons and tons of these wrinkly, wriggly, but long and beautiful and nice, thick-walled, like peach orange peppers. And they're pretty hot and super sweet, a really great flavor. So if you're trying to make some good hot sauces or flavor a dish that's a little bit more exotic, these peppers will provide that. Oh, what is that? Because they just have such a good, rich flavor. All right, I don't have any large ones of these. I got a little baby one from a 2-year-old plant right here, a little datil, but I do have some nice ones out on some plants right now. Actually, Paul from Chone Hot Sauce gave me a little datil pepper last year, and I harvested the seeds out of that, and I planted them, and I gave him back some pepper plants. So he gave me some pepper, and he got some pepper plants back, and those turned out to be massive, monstrous, and I did them a little bit later in the season, and honestly, they just love that. So I've got some massive datil pepper plants. Cue the B-roll. And this pepper comes in at 100 to 300,000 Scoville heat units, ripens to a rich orange color, and has a really nice sweet tropical flavor that also is really great for sauces. So the datil and the Sugar Rush Peach, both of these have shown that they can overwinter here, although the Sugar Rush Peach was better at it, and they both have a lot of heat and a lot of flavor, so they're great for making sauces. Highly recommend both of those peppers if you're looking to try out something kind of freakishly hot that isn't freakishly hard to grow, and something a little more fun than like a habanero, you know. Then now let's get crazy with it. I've got the Carolina Reapers. Let's look at, there's a couple of them right there. Here's some bigger ones right here. Look at these guys. Coming in at 1.5 to 2 million Scoville heat units. These Carolina, and they can go even a little bit higher than that, I believe. The record holders. This is one of the hottest peppers in the world. I got this plant from Paul, and I'm loving the results this year. I did really well with it in the pots, like I was saying. So do not grow this pepper unless you've got a plan for it or you're just trying to have some fun, because there's really not many dishes that you can spice it with. Although I do make this awesome fire cider by infusing apple cider vinegar with different peppers and different other things. And the Carolina Reaper has such a consistently high heat level that you can bring the spice level up in a big batch of something and know that one, two, or a few peppers is going to do the trick. So I do have a use for these, and because of that, I enjoy growing them because they provide so much heat for just one plant, and you can make a whole lot of stuff. If you're mixing a couple of serranos or sugar rush peach or datil and jalapenos with a little bit of Carolina Reaper, then you can make a whole lot of stuff with all sorts of varying heat levels, just using the Reapers and the other super hot peppers to bring up the heat levels if you want to. So yeah, there you go. That's all 16 of the peppers that I grew in my garden this year, and hope you enjoyed the video footage and my editing. So yeah, tell me what peppers you grew in your garden this year, what you were having success with, and what you're not going to grow again. And also remember to like and subscribe because this one took me a lot of effort, so I really appreciate it. All right, peace.